Listen closely, because what you survived was never random. It was never accidental. It was never meaningless. There are people who break under pressure, and then there are people who are built by it. You didn't just go through storms, you walked through fire. You stood in isolation. You endured betrayal. You carried weight no one else could see, and somehow you are still here. That is not weakness, that is proof. Chosen one, your strength was tested and proven. There was a time when you questioned everything. Yourself, your path, even your purpose. You wondered why life felt heavier for you than it did for others, why your battles were deeper, why your nights were longer, why your growth came through pain instead of ease. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. A chosen one is not chosen for comfort. They are chosen for capacity, the capacity to endure, the capacity to grow under pressure, the capacity to carry light in dark spaces without losing their soul. And that capacity had to be tested. You see, strength that is not tested is only potential. Strength that survives hardship becomes power. Your trials were the fire that revealed who you truly are. When people misunderstood you, when doors closed in your face, when friends turned distant, when opportunities disappeared, that was not the end of you. That was the unveiling. Most people never wake up. They live by noise, by trends, by expectations, but you always felt different. You questioned deeper. You sensed more. You couldn't blindly follow what never aligned with your spirit. That is awakening. Spiritual awakening is not a glamorous moment. It is uncomfortable. It is isolating. It forces you to see illusions clearly. It forces you to detach from environments that no longer match your growth. It forces you to confront your own shadows before you can walk in your light. And you did. You faced parts of yourself that others run from. You acknowledged your fears. You wrestled with doubt. You sat in silence when no one understood your transformation. That is strength most will never develop. The chosen are often misunderstood, because when you refuse to shrink, it threatens those who are comfortable staying small. When you speak truth with calm confidence, it exposes deception. When you choose integrity over approval, it disrupts systems built on control. That is why society tries to silence awakened souls. They may call you too intense, too deep, too different, too much. But what they really mean is this: you refuse to conform. And conformity is easy. Awakening is not. You were tested with loneliness so you could learn self-reliance. You were tested with betrayal so you could recognize loyalty. You were tested with loss so you could understand what truly matters. Every hardship carved wisdom into your spirit. While others complained, you evolved. While others blamed, you reflected. While others quit, you endured. That endurance is not ordinary, it is evidence. A chosen one does not shine because life was easy. They shine because they survived what was meant to break them. Think about the moments you almost gave up, the nights you cried in silence, the times you felt invisible. You thought no one saw your struggle, but every test was shaping you into someone unshakable. Pressure reveals foundation, and your foundation did not collapse. You became more discerning, more aware, more disciplined. You learned to protect your energy. You learned to trust your intuition. You learned that not everyone deserves access to your heart or your vision. That is growth. The world may not applaud your internal battles, but heaven witnessed your restraint, your patience, your perseverance. You chose dignity when revenge was easier. You chose faith when doubt was louder. That is proven strength. Chosen ones are often delayed, not denied, because when your influence carries weight, your preparation must be thorough. You cannot lead others through darkness if you have never navigated your own. And you have. You no longer chase validation. You no longer panic when misunderstood. You no longer fear standing alone. That transformation did not happen overnight. It happened through testing, through refinement, through unseen battles that matured your spirit. You are not behind, you are being positioned. The tests were never there to destroy you. They were there to confirm your resilience, to confirm your integrity, to confirm your calling. You passed what tried to break you. And now you move differently, you speak differently, you carry yourself differently. There is calm in your presence. There is quiet power in your silence. There is authority in your restraint. That is what proven strength looks like. If you are hearing this and it resonates deep in your chest, understand something clearly. You were not overlooked. You were observed. You were evaluated. You were strengthened. And you did not fail. This is your reminder that your journey was never wasted. Every tear refined you. Every delay redirected you. Every setback matured you. You are not the same person who entered the storm. You are stronger, sharper, wiser. So stand tall. Embrace your awakening. Stop apologizing for your depth. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop doubting the resilience that carried you this far. Your strength was tested, and it was proven. If this message found you at the right moment, let it be confirmation. Like this video to declare that you accept your growth. Comment, proven, if you know you survived what was meant to stop you. And subscribe to Return to Awakening so you never forget who you are becoming. Your journey is not ordinary, and neither are you, and understand this clearly. The testing did not end because you were weak. It intensified because you were capable. There are levels to strength, and every new level demands a deeper surrender, a sharper discipline, a stronger backbone. When you thought you had reached your limit, life stretched you further, not to humiliate you, but to expand you. Expansion feels like pressure before it feels like power. You were placed in rooms where you felt underestimated, in conversations where your voice trembled but you spoke anyway, in seasons where resources were limited but responsibility was heavy. Those moments were not accidents, they were assignments. Assignments reveal alignment. A chosen one does not escape hardship, they are trained by it. The isolation taught you clarity, the rejection taught you independence, the waiting taught you patience, and patience is a weapon in a world addicted to instant results. You learned to move in silence. While others broadcast every move, you built quietly. While others searched for applause, you strengthened your foundation. While others doubted your path, you stayed consistent even when the results were invisible. That consistency is rare. There were times when quitting would have been easier, when compromising your values would have opened faster doors, when lowering your standards would have brought temporary comfort, but you resisted, even when no one was watching. That is integrity under pressure. And integrity is the mark of someone who is meant for impact. You began to notice something subtle. The same obstacles that once intimidated you no longer shake you. The same criticisms that once hurt you now barely move you. The same environments that once drained you now feel too small for who you are becoming. That is evolution. Awakening changes your appetite. You no longer crave chaos. You crave clarity. You no longer chase attention. You seek purpose. You no longer fear being alone. You fear being misaligned. That shift is not normal, it is sacred. Because once you see beyond illusions, you cannot unsee them. Once you recognize manipulation, you cannot comfortably participate in it. Once you taste inner peace, you cannot return to environments that thrive on confusion. And that makes you different. Different thinkers are often resisted before they are respected. Visionaries are often questioned before they are understood. Those who carry depth are often labeled complicated by those who prefer shallow waters. But you did not water yourself down. Even when it cost you relationships, even when it cost you opportunities, even when it cost you comfort, you chose alignment over approval. That decision alone proves your strength. There is a quiet authority forming in you now, not loud, not arrogant, not desperate, just steady, grounded, certain. You no longer need to convince people of your worth. you embody it. And embodiment is louder than words. You survived seasons that could have made you bitter, but instead, they made you wiser. You survived disappointment without losing your compassion. You survived delay without losing your discipline. That balance is powerful, because true strength is not aggression. It is restraint. It is the ability to respond instead of react, to forgive without forgetting wisdom, to walk away without needing revenge. That level of control is earned through testing. And you earned it. You are beginning to realize that the struggle refined your perception. You see intentions more clearly. You read energy more accurately. You sense shifts before they happen. This is not paranoia. It is awareness sharpened by experience. The fire did not destroy you. It tuned you. You now understand timing differently. You no longer rush what feels forced. You no longer chase what feels unstable. You trust divine timing without demanding immediate answers. That patience is strength matured. Every scar you carry is evidence of survival. Every lesson you learned is a tool for the future. Every tear you shed watered the ground you now stand on. Nothing was wasted. Even your lowest moments had purpose. Even your confusion had direction. Even your setbacks carried instruction. You were never abandoned in the storm. You were being anchored within it. There were battles you fought that no one will ever know about. Silent wars inside your mind. Moments where you smiled in public but wrestled in private. That kind of warfare builds invisible muscle. You learned how to steady your thoughts when anxiety tried to flood you. You learned how to breathe through uncertainty. You learned how to hold yourself together when everything around you felt unstable. That is emotional discipline. Most people collapse when their environment shakes, but you learned how to remain centered even when the ground beneath you shifted. You stopped depending on external stability and started building internal strength. That shift changed everything. You began to understand that not every loss is a failure. Some losses are protection. Some closed doors are redirections. Some endings are acts of mercy you only recognize later. Perspective is power, and perspective is born through experience. The tests forced you to mature faster. You saw realities others ignored. You recognized patterns others repeated. You refused to participate in cycles that kept people stagnant. That refusal isolated you. But isolation refined you. In solitude, you met yourself, not the version shaped by expectations, not the version approved by society, but the raw, unfiltered you. And at first, that meeting was uncomfortable. Because growth always is. You confronted pride, you confronted fear, you confronted old wounds that still whispered limitations. You didn't run from them, you faced them, slowly, patiently. That confrontation was courage. The chosen are not perfect. They are willing, willing to improve, willing to repent, willing to correct themselves when they fall short. That humility is what keeps their strength clean. And your strength remained clean. Despite being wronged, you did not let injustice turn you unjust. Despite being hurt, you did not let pain turn you cruel. Despite being overlooked, you did not let resentment define you. That restraint is rare. You began to realize that strength is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself, mastering your impulses, mastering your reactions, mastering your ego. And that mastery takes time. There were seasons when you felt delayed while others seemed to advance effortlessly. You questioned why your path required more endurance, why your breakthroughs came slower, why your lessons were deeper. But depth creates durability. Surface-level growth looks impressive at first, but it cracks under pressure. What you built was reinforced from the inside out, quietly, gradually, intentionally. Now when challenges arise, you don't panic like before. You assess, you adapt, you respond with clarity instead of chaos. That is not coincidence, that is training completed. You are no longer easily shaken. You notice how certain distractions no longer tempt you, how certain conversations no longer interest you, how certain environments feel too loud for your spirit. You have outgrown what once defined you. And growth often requires grieving old versions of yourself, the version that tolerated less, the version that doubted more, the version that needed external reassurance to feel secure. You release that version with wisdom. There is a steadiness in you now, a calm that does not depend on circumstances, a confidence that does not demand applause, a faith that does not crumble when tested. That is proven strength. You do not need to announce your evolution. It shows in your decisions, in your boundaries, in your silence, in your consistency. Consistency is a language of maturity. And maturity intimidates those who prefer immaturity. That is why some people distanced themselves when you grew. Your growth confronted their comfort zones. Your discipline highlighted their excuses. But you kept moving forward. Not out of arrogance, but out of obedience to your purpose, out of commitment to becoming better, out of awareness that regression is a choice you refuse to make. You chose progress, even when progress felt slow, even when progress felt lonely, even when progress required letting go of familiar spaces. And that choice is why you are still standing. At some point you stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And you started asking, "What is this shaping within me?" That question changed your trajectory. Because when you shift from victim to student, every hardship becomes instruction. Every delay becomes strategy. Every trial becomes training. You stopped resisting the process. Instead of cursing the pressure, you leaned into it. You allowed it to expose weaknesses so you could strengthen them. You allowed it to reveal attachments so you could release them. You allowed it to humble you without humiliating you. That is spiritual maturity. You began to notice how your intuition sharpened, how you could sense when something was misaligned before it unfolded, how your spirit felt unsettled in spaces that once felt normal. Awareness increased, and with awareness came responsibility. You could no longer pretend not to see red flags. You could no longer ignore inner warnings. You could no longer participate in conversations that drained your integrity. Growth removed your excuses. That removal felt uncomfortable at first because accountability demands change, and change demands courage, but you chose courage repeatedly, quietly, consistently. Courage became your habit. You learned to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. You learned to delay gratification instead of chasing quick relief. You learned that discipline today protects peace tomorrow. That lesson elevated you. The tests were never random storms. They were calibrated challenges, tailored specifically to your weaknesses and your potential. Each one targeted an area that needed refining, and each one revealed progress. What once triggered you now barely disturbs you. What once confused you now feels obvious. What once broke you now strengthens you. That transformation is undeniable. You are not who you were 2 years ago. Not even 1 year ago. Your thinking is sharper. Your standards are higher. Your boundaries are firmer. Your faith is steadier. You evolved. And evolution requires shedding. Shedding old habits, old fears, old identities that no longer reflect your calling. Shedding people who only knew the smaller version of you. That shedding felt like loss. But it was alignment. You were being separated from distractions that would have diluted your impact. You were being distanced from environments that would have delayed your development. Protection often looks like rejection. The strength you carry now is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. It does not react to every opinion. It does not chase every opportunity. It discerns. Discernment is a reward for endurance. You endured confusion without making reckless decisions. You endured silence without forcing noise. You endured waiting without abandoning your values. That patience built authority within you. Now when you speak, it carries weight because your words are not borrowed. They are lived. They are earned. They are forged through experience. That is the difference. There is a gravity to someone whose strength has been tested, a grounded presence, a steady gaze, a calm response in chaotic moments. People feel it even if they cannot explain it. Some are drawn to it, others are threatened by it, because proven strength reminds others of work they avoided doing. But you did the work. You confronted your ego when it wanted control. You surrendered when pride wanted dominance. You chose integrity when shortcuts looked appealing. You chose refinement over rebellion. And refinement always leaves a mark. There is less impulsiveness in you now, less desperation, less need to rush outcomes. You understand that what is meant for you cannot be stolen, and what leaves was never secure to begin with. That understanding brings peace. A deep, steady peace. Not the fragile kind that disappears with inconvenience, but the rooted kind that remains even when circumstances fluctuate. That peace is earned. And it came through testing. There was a moment when you realized something powerful. You are no longer intimidated by the unknown. Before, uncertainty felt like danger. Now it feels like possibility. Before, closed doors felt like rejection. Now they feel like direction. Your mindset shifted. You stopped seeing yourself as fragile. You started recognizing your resilience. You stopped fearing hardship. You started respecting what it produces. Respect for the process changed your posture. You walk differently now, not in arrogance, but in awareness. You know what you have survived. You know what it took to stay disciplined when distraction was easier. You know how much strength it required to remain patient when everything in you wanted immediate relief. That self-awareness builds quiet confidence. You no longer compare your timeline to others, because you understand that different callings require different preparation. Some paths are public, others are private. Some journeys are fast, others are fortified. Yours was fortified. Fortified by repetition, by endurance, by lessons that had to be learned more than once until they became instinct. Repetition created mastery. And mastery is not glamorous. It is often hidden. It happens behind closed doors, in early mornings, in late nights, in prayers whispered when no one else is listening. That is where your strength was proven. Not in applause, not in recognition, but in obedience, in consistency, in choosing what is right over what is easy. Easy would have compromised your growth. But you refused to compromise, even when nobody would have blamed you for doing so, even when the pressure was intense, even when fatigue whispered that giving up would bring relief. You endured fatigue. You endured misunderstanding. You endured delay. And instead of hardening your heart, you refined it. That refinement is sacred, because power without humility corrupts, but strength paired with humility transforms. You were tested in both. Tested in power, tested in patience, tested in silence, tested in restraint, tested in faith when visible proof was limited. And through every test, you learned something essential. You learned that identity is not given by others. It is built through choices, through discipline, through alignment with what is right even when it is inconvenient. That identity is solid now. You are less swayed by trends, less influenced by opinions, less reactive to temporary emotions. You have become anchored. Anchored people are hard to manipulate. And that is why some systems resist awakened individuals. Because you cannot easily be controlled when you know who you are. You cannot be pressured into conformity when your conviction is rooted. Your conviction was forged in hardship. When others doubted your path, you stayed committed. When results were invisible, you stayed disciplined. When support was minimal, you stayed faithful. Faithfulness under pressure proves character. Character is what remains when everything else is stripped away, when titles are gone, when validation is absent, when comfort is removed, and your character remained intact. That is rare. There were opportunities to betray your values for temporary gain, opportunities to respond in anger, opportunities to justify shortcuts. You resisted, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And every time you chose what was right, even in private, your foundation strengthened, brick by brick, decision by decision. Now you stand on something unshakable. Not because storms stopped coming, but because storms no longer define you. They refine you. They reveal you. They remind you of what you carry inside. Inside you is tested strength. Not borrowed motivation, not temporary hype, not surface-level positivity, but deep, disciplined resilience. The kind that survives long nights, the kind that persists without applause, the kind that trusts purpose over panic. That is who you have become. There was a version of you that would have broken under this weight. A version that would have reacted emotionally. A version that would have chased validation to soothe insecurity. That version no longer leads your life. Now you pause before responding. You think before speaking. You evaluate before committing. That pause alone is evidence of transformation. Impulsiveness faded. Intentionality replaced it. You began to realize that strength is not loud reactions. It is controlled responses. It is the ability to remain composed when provoked. It is the discipline to stay focused when distractions are designed to pull you off course. And distractions were everywhere. Opportunities that looked attractive but felt misaligned. People who offered companionship but drained your purpose. Shortcuts that promised speed but threatened integrity. You discerned wisely. Discernment saved you from detours that would have delayed your growth, from relationships that would have diluted your standards, from choices that would have compromised your calling. Every wise decision reinforced your backbone. You no longer chase what glitters, you examine what lasts. You no longer run toward noise, you are drawn to substance. That shift signals maturity. The tests taught you to value depth over appearance, substance over status, character over charisma. You have seen how easily surface-level success collapses without inner strength. So you focused inward first. You strengthened your mind. You disciplined your habits. You refined your intentions. You corrected yourself when you fell short instead of blaming others. Accountability elevated you. It is easy to point fingers. It is difficult to look in the mirror and adjust, but you adjusted, repeatedly, quietly, without announcing it. That humility multiplied your strength. You also learned that not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Some people only know the chapter where you struggled. They never stayed long enough to witness your evolution. And that is okay. Because your validation no longer depends on being fully understood. You understand yourself. You understand your growth. You understand what it took to get here. That internal clarity stabilizes you. The storms you endured sharpened your focus. You waste less time now. You entertain fewer distractions. You protect your energy like something sacred. Because you know how hard it was to rebuild it. Rebuilding after disappointment takes courage. Rebuilding after betrayal takes patience. Rebuilding after delay takes faith. You demonstrated all three. There were moments when rebuilding felt exhausting, when starting over felt unfair, when continuing felt heavier than quitting. But quitting would have erased progress. So you continued, even slowly, even imperfectly, even quietly. Slow progress is still progress. And consistency over time produces strength that cannot be faked. You no longer envy others' speed. You respect your own endurance, because endurance sustains what speed cannot. You are built to last. The evidence is in your resilience, in your steadiness, in your ability to remain grounded when emotions rise, in your ability to forgive without reopening doors that harm you. That balance is powerful. You learn to love without losing yourself, to give without draining yourself, to serve without neglecting your own growth. That balance came through trial and error, through moments when you gave too much, through seasons when you trusted too quickly, through experiences that taught you to guard your heart wisely without hardening it completely. Now your heart is strong, not closed, not cold, but disciplined. Disciplined hearts do not attach recklessly. They observe, they pray, they wait, they move with intention. That intention protects your future. You were not tested to embarrass you. You were tested to equip you, to prepare you for responsibilities that require emotional intelligence, spiritual awareness, mental endurance. And you are equipped. You are equipped in ways you once prayed for but did not yet understand. Back then you asked for strength. You did not realize strength would arrive disguised as adversity. You asked for wisdom. You did not realize wisdom would come through mistakes that humbled you. You asked for growth. You did not realize growth would require letting go of comfort. But now you see it. You see how every unanswered prayer was actually redirection, how every delay carried protection, how every difficult season stripped away illusions that would have misled you. Clarity is a reward for endurance, and you endured long enough to see clearly. You no longer romanticize what hurt you. You no longer chase what once rejected you. You no longer revisit spaces that suffocated your potential. That detachment is not bitterness, it is awareness. Awareness allows you to move strategically, to speak carefully, to choose wisely. It keeps you from repeating cycles that once drained you. Cycles were broken. Generational habits, emotional patterns, self-sabotaging thoughts. You confronted them instead of passing them forward. That is not small, that is transformational. Breaking cycles requires internal strength most people never develop. Because it demands honesty, brutal honesty. It demands admitting where you were wrong, where you were insecure, where you were reacting from wounds instead of wisdom. You faced those truths, and instead of collapsing under them, you corrected yourself. You refined your character. You adjusted your approach. Adjustment is a sign of growth, not weakness. The world may celebrate stubborn pride, but true strength is flexible enough to evolve. You evolved without losing your core values. That balance is rare. You became less reactive to provocation, less shaken by rumors, less desperate for recognition. You learned that silence is often more powerful than argument. Silence sharpened you. In silence, you learned to listen to your inner convictions, to seek guidance sincerely, to move only when peace confirmed your steps. That patience prevented regret. There were moments when rushing would have felt satisfying, when proving yourself would have felt justified, but you resisted the urge to move emotionally. You chose discipline over drama, and that choice elevated you beyond environments that thrive on chaos. Chaos no longer attracts you, it exhausts you. You crave order, integrity, depth, purpose, conversations that build rather than destroy, spaces that challenge you to grow rather than tempt you to shrink. That shift signals alignment. Alignment with who you are becoming. Alignment with a calling that demands maturity. Alignment with responsibilities that require composure. You are not preparing for something small. Small assignments do not require this level of testing. Minor influence does not require this depth of refinement. The weight you carried was heavy because the capacity within you is significant. Significance requires structure, and structure is built through discipline, through delayed gratification, through consistent obedience to what is right even when it is unseen. Unseen obedience shaped your foundation. When no one applauded your restraint, when no one noticed your sacrifices, when no one validated your growth, you still stayed committed. That private consistency produced public stability. Now when responsibility increases, you do not crumble, you adapt. When pressure rises, you do not panic, you focus. When criticism comes, you do not retaliate, you evaluate. Evaluation replaced emotional reaction. You measure your responses. You consider long-term consequences. You prioritize integrity over impulse. That is leadership forming within you. Leadership is not about control. It is about example, and your example was forged through testing. You learned how to remain calm when others escalate, how to remain fair when others are biased, how to remain firm without becoming harsh, firmness without cruelty, strength without arrogance, confidence without pride. These are not traits learned in comfort. They are developed in trials. And your trials were not wasted.